Hello students, we will continue our discussion on the concept balance of power. In the last lecture we discussed the meaning of balance of power, then we focused on the argument that whether it is an automatic system or manually controlled system, and then we discussed important conditions for the success of balance of power in international politics. In this class we will discuss what are the goals and means of balance of power. Now we will start with this question that the purpose or the goal of balance of power is not the maintenance of international peace and stability as usually understood. So, many scholars believe that the main purpose of balance of power is maintenance of international peace and stability, but this is actually not the case. Rather, it is to preserve the integrity of the multi-state system by preventing any ambitious state from swallowing of its neighboring countries. So, the main objective is to prevent any particular country to swallow or to occupy another country, and in that way it may create problem for balance of power. So, in that way the main objective is not to maintain stability, to maintain peace in the international system, rather to protect the integrity or the sanctity of the multi-state system operating at the international level. The basic intuition behind the theory is that states are not to be trusted with disproportionate power, which threatens all the members of the international system. So, the logic of maintaining this kind of balance of power is that you can't trust the state, those who are with more power, those who are more powerful countries, they cannot be trusted, because sometimes they will follow a kind of friendly policy towards you, tomorrow they may change their policy. So, there is no guarantee that powerful countries will always behave in the friendly way. So, that is the reason why you always follow the logic of balance of power, because that is how you can control the hegemonic power in international politics. The danger is that a predatory great power might gain more than half of the total resources of the system and thereby be in a position to subjugate all of the rest. So, it is the balance of power also operates in the logic that if one country is allowed to dominate the system, it may take half of the resources, and resources are always limited. So, in that way you want to prevent the predatory power to control the half of the system, because that is not your objective. Your objective is to maintain balance of power, and that is how you want to prevent one particular country from dominating the system or from allowing other states or threatening other states to continue in the international system. It is further assumed that the only truly effective and reliable antidote to power is power itself. As Abdul Kalam said, power respects power and strength respects strength. That means if a country is powerful, then definitely others would respect it, others would definitely give it importance. But in balance of power system, this is important in the sense that if you want to maintain balance of power, so if you want to counter a very powerful country, then you have to increase your power, or you have to increase the power of your allies and friends. Increases in power, especially rivals' growing strength, therefore must be checked by a countervailing power. So, the logic is if there is an unnecessary expansion of the power of a rival country or a competitive country, that may create the problem for the whole balance of power system in international level, and that is how you increase your power, you also increase and assist the other countries in your side to gain maximum power, so that you are in a position and others are in a position to act as a countervailing power against that particular country which is trying to dominate the international system. An accurate assessment of balance of power must include few things like the military capabilities, the means of destruction each holds and can draw upon. So, what is the military capability of yours? What is the military capability of your enemy? This factor has to be taken into consideration while thinking or assessing the balance of power system. Second, the political capacity to extract and apply those capabilities. So, are you really willing to go to war? Are you going to help the other countries who are feeling threatened? Are you really going to form a countervailing bloc or countervailing power bloc to counter the enemy or the other party? So, that is a conscious political decision that you have to take, and it is not that you have all the power, and if it is power, by virtue of that power balance of power will be maintained. Rather, it's a conscious decision you have to take. You have to translate your potential power into actual power, and if there is a need, you can fight a war against that particular country which is threatening the operation of balance of power in the international system. The third is the capabilities and reliability of commitments of allies and possible allies. So, it is not just your commitment, rather what is the commitment of your allies and friends, whether they are going to join with you, whether they are also interested in the balance of power. So, these are important factors you have to consider when assessing the success or failure of balance of power. And the last is the basic feature of political geography of the conflict, how the conflict is going to be fought, how the war is going to be fought, these are all important decisions you have to think when you are assessing the success or failure of the balance of power system. Now, let us discuss about various methods that are used for maintaining balance of power system in international politics. The first method is called internal balancing, where a state uses internal efforts or self-help efforts, you can say, such as moving to increase its economic capability, developing clever strategies, and increasing military strength to build up its arms and ammunition. So, the point is, one way through which you can counter the power of the other party is to follow the logic of self-help, and you have to improve your military capability, you have to improve your economic capability, you have to follow clear-cut and clever military strategies, and these are going to help you to increase your power, and in a way you can countervail or you can counter the other party. And the next important method is what is called alliances and counter-alliances. Alliances can be of two types. One is the offensive alliances, and the other is called defensive alliances. So, while an offensive alliance seeks to upset the balance in one's favor, a defensive alliance aims to restore the balance of power in the other country's favor. So, if NATO was first created, so it was considered as offensive, and when Warsaw Pact was created, it was called defensive, because you are taking a defensive position against NATO. So, the point is, when somebody establishes the alliance first, it is basically considered as offensive, but if you establish an alliances as a reaction to the others military pact or military alliances, so that is basically considered as defensive. The general conditions for success of alliance include factors such as common interest, common ideologies, common economic interest, geography, and cultural similarities. So, you will find that all the countries, those who are the members of NATO, they were all threatened by the growing power of the USSR, and the United States gave leadership to the NATO countries, and it established the NATO so that they can protect themselves from communist expansionism and the increasing military capability of the USSR. So, in that way, it was basically an offensive organization established to counter the Soviet threat, but it was offensive for the USSR, but defensive for the NATO countries. But there are some important conditions that are important for the success of alliances and counter-alliances. So, in addition to the common interest, there should be some common ideology, common economic interest, geographical contiguity, and cultural similarities also. So, these factors are important for a strong military alliances relationship. So, if there are cultural dissimilarities, or if there is no common economic interest or common ideology, so that may create a problem. So, a communist country cannot join the NATO, because NATO was created to fight communism. So, there should be ideological similarity, and they also share similar threat perceptions, similar problems with the other countries. So, that is how alliances will be successful. The next important method for the successful operation of balance of power is called armaments and disarmament. The arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union in the post Second World War period was perhaps the greatest of all arms races. So, the two superpowers, they were engaged in a mad arms race, developing nuclear weapons, hydrogen bombs, and many dangerous weapons, and in fact at that time they reached to such an extent that they attained a military capability to destroy the earth several times, not just once, several times, not just rival rather they can destroy the whole world, they can destroy the whole earth. So the point is, so armaments and disarmaments, they are also used as an important method for maintaining balance of power. Like armaments, disarmament can also destroy or restore the balance of power system. The states concerned may agree on a proportionate reduction in their arms to stabilize the balance of power among them. So either you follow the logic of arms race, or you want the two parties to reduce their arms or renounce their arms. That will really help you to maintain balance of power. So there is a difference between arms control and disarmament. Arms control is basically when you reduce the size of the arsenal, or you reduce the capacity of the arsenal. But disarmament means you renounce that particular weapon, and voluntarily both the parties agree to renounce that particular weapon. So armaments and disarmament, they are considered as important instruments or important methods for balance of power system to be operational. Next important method is divide and rule. This method is used by nations to try to make or keep their competitors weak by dividing them or keeping them divided. You must have seen how Britain followed this divide and rule policy in India, so that they can rule the country for a long period of time. They created the problem of divide and rule between Hindus and Muslims. So both the communities would not get united, because a united opposition would create problems for the imperialists. So the countries also follow, the great powers also follow this logic. So when there is a problem, or any particular country can create the problem, so they will try to divide and rule that country. There are many examples in history. Germany was divided, Korea was divided. So that is how you try to control the situation, or you maintain the balance of power system in the world. Then there is another method called compensation. Compensation is basically means annexation or division of a particular territory. After the Second World War, Germany was divided, Korea was divided, and Vietnam was divided, so that the parties who were playing the role of the balancers, so they will get the booty, they will get the prize. So the point is, you have to sometimes follow the policy of compensation, so that two parties get some benefits, and that is how they are satisfied with the operation of the balance of power system. The next is called intervention and non-intervention, and it focuses on the role of a balancer. So when you are talking of intervention or non-intervention, you are basically highlighting the role of a balancer, or if there are two major blocks, the third country is more powerful. So depending on the situation, either it will join one block or the other block. So role of balancer is important in intervention and non-intervention. Intervention may range all the way from slight deviation from neutrality to full-scale military participation in a major war. So when you act as a balancer, so sometimes you are deviating from the principle of neutrality, and if there is a need, you can engage yourself in a full-scale military participation in a major war, so that balance of power situation can be restored. Non-intervention suggests a kind of policy usually followed by small states and all those great powers which are satisfied with the political order and can create and follow peaceful methods to preserve the balance. So basically non-intervention means everything is fine, you are happy with the current balance of power situation, you are happy with the current distribution of the power in international politics. So you don't do anything, rather you just follow the policy of neutrality, or you are there to look at the situation and behave accordingly. Next important method is called buffer states. These are small intermediary states which are used by great powers in their balancing game of power politics for their political, military and strategic purposes. So sometimes you need buffer states so that two power blocks can avoid direct confrontation between them. There are many examples in history about the buffer states. Afghanistan had been a traditional buffer states between Imperial Russia and Britain, the colonial Britain, or you can say British India. So Tibet serves the purpose of a buffer states between India and China. Then the same case about Nepal and Bhutan. So the point is, if two important powers, they directly touch each other's boundary, that may create problems in the balance of power situation. So that's why buffer state is considered as an important method for maintaining balance of power in international politics. Now let us evaluate balance of power as a theory and concept in international politics, because there are so many changes at the global level, particularly after the end of the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union. So there are so many changes in the world, and the question is, what is the utility of balance of power in international relations, because the bipolar world order is not there. So now it is a very kind of fluid international situation. Neither the United States is the sole superpower, rather it is a kind of multipolar order where you will find countries like India, China, they have emerged as great powers. So what is the utility of balance of power theory in this changed circumstances, that we will discuss in this evaluation part. But we will also look at the points raised by the supporters and the points raised by those who are opposing the theory of balance of power. Since the end of the Cold War, many scholars of international politics have come to believe that realism and the balance of power theory, they are now obsolete. So not only realism has become obsolete, rather the theory of balance of power has also become irrelevant, or it is outdated now. Liberals claim that the balance of power theory may be appropriate to a bygone era, because now there are important global changes like globalization, democratic peace and international institutions. They have fundamentally transformed the international relations. We are moving now to a period when there is no power politics, or we are moving to a period when we are not witnessing any kind of power politics. So the liberals, they severely criticize the theory of balance of power, because in the globalized world, countries are more and more turning towards democracy and international relations. You will find the role of international institutions, they are playing an important role in world politics. So in this kind of interdependent world, in this kind of global world or globalized world, so there is no scope for power politics. So both realism and the balance of power theory, they have become outdated. Scholars like Richard Rosecrans, for instance, claims that the military state is being replaced by a trading state, in the sense that competition for global market shares has become more important than territorial conquest. So now we are not looking at an era when every country is now interested for economic development, every country is now interested for global market share. So gone are those days of territorial conquest, colonialism and imperialism, because you need a theory like balance of power in those period of time. But at this moment, when the whole world is being globalized, when it is integrated, when the whole world is operating under the complex theory of interdependence, when the information technology has connected all parts of the world. So at this time, there is no scope of balance of power politics or balance of power theory. This means the present multipolar system can be best understood as a new multi-partner order. So it is not a kind of multipolar balance of power system, rather it is a kind of multi-partner system where you need all countries to arrive at a solution of the contemporary global problems. Maybe it is terrorism, maybe it is environmental issues, maybe it is nuclear proliferation. So in this world, when all the states are interdependent, when they are all vulnerable to transnational and global threats, so or you can't give much importance to a concept like balance of power. Constructivists claim that the balance of power theory's focus on material forces misses the central role played by the ideational factors like norms, identities in the construction of threats and alliances. So the other theorists, those who criticize the concept of balance of power, they are the constructivists who always object to the exclusive emphasis on the material forces by the realist, and because they do not give adequate importance to the ideational factors like norms, the role of identities in the construction of threats and alliances. We have already discussed in the constructivist approach to international relations, who are talking basically on the social construction of the reality, how countries like North Korea having very limited number of nuclear weapons is considered as a great threat to America rather than UK or France, those who are having more than 500 nuclear weapons. So, the issue is it is a kind of perception, it is a kind of threat you create. It is basically a threat created by social construction, or you yourself construct this kind of threats, you yourself believe in this kind of threats. So, you create this kind of threats, you believe in this kind of threats. So, that is the reason why constructivists are not very happy with the concept of balance of power theory. Realists themselves wonder why no global balance of power has materialized since the end of the Cold War. So, there are many realists who also question the utility of balance of power theory, because they think that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, after the end of the Cold War, global balance of power has not materialized. And what is the reason? There are so many arguments and counter arguments. Stephen Brooks and William Wolford, for example, see a kind of world out of balance, because the United States is now the most preeminent power in international relations, and this situation is not suitable for a balance of power system to operate in international relations. So, basically they think that this situation will continue for next few decades, or maybe for next 30-50 years. In a situation when you have only one preeminent power, so you do not think of balance of power to be successful. The question is, who is going to balance the United States? Before few years, many scholars argued that China may be a countervailing power, or it may counter the United States, but as its economic condition now proves, it shows that China is declining as a major economic power, and if it further declines, the question of China posing a threat to United States or may act as a countervailing power to United States, that will not be there. So, in that situation, Stephen and William, they argue that theory of balance of power may not be relevant at a time when the United States enjoys the only superpower status or preeminent position in international politics. Let us summarize what we have discussed so far. The key goals of balance of power are to prevent any single state or coalition of states from gaining hegemony, thereby promoting stability and reducing the likelihood of conflict in the international system. It aims to distribute power among the states in a way that ensures mutual deterrence, enhances security, and maintains a stable equilibrium among the competing actors. An accurate assessment of balance of power involves evaluating the distribution of military capabilities, economic resources, and political influence among the states or the actors. It requires analyzing factors such as alliances, strategic partnership, military doctrines, technological advancements, and regional dynamics to determine how these elements collectively shape the relative power and influence of each participant in the international system. Maintaining balance of power involves several methods and strategies. These include internal balancing. State invests in military capabilities, including weapon systems and defense infrastructure, to deter aggression and demonstrate readiness to defend their interests. Next, alliances and counter-alliances. States form alliances and coalitions with other like-minded countries to counterbalance the potential threats and enhance their collective security capability. The next is armaments and disarmaments. States engage in armament by building up their military capabilities, acquiring advanced weapons, and enhancing their defense infrastructure, while disarmament involves the reduction or limitation of military forces, weapon stockpiles, and defense expenditures through treaties, agreements, and unilateral actions. Next is divide and rule. Divide and rule in power balancing refers to a strategy where a state or an actor exploits the divisions or rivalries among other actors to weaken political coalitions or alliances that could challenge its own power, thereby maintaining or enhancing its position in the international balance of power system. Next is compensation, which involves offering concessions, benefits, or incentives to other states or actors to offset perceived imbalances or grievances, thereby fostering cooperation, reducing tensions, and maintaining stability in international relations. Next method is intervention and non-intervention, where states and international actors intervene militarily or diplomatically in conflicts or disputes to influence the outcomes or refraining from involvement in the internal affairs of other states. The main objective is to avoid exacerbating conflicts or provoking alliances that could upset the balance of power regionally or globally. The next method is buffer state. A buffer state serves as a strategic geopolitical entity between potentially conflicting or rival powers, acting thereby as a barrier to mitigate direct confrontation and stabilize regional dynamics. Tibet between India and China, Nepal between India and China are the best examples of the buffer state. In the next lecture, we will evaluate balance of power as a theory in international relations. Thank you very much for your attention. See you in the next class.